Hi guys, it's Ariana. Welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, we're going to be reading some more scary stories. So as per usual, I have my wicked candle in here smelling like caramel apple, and I have my hot chocolate candle in here setting the mood for some cozy, spooky stories. So I have a bunch of DMs from Instagram that I'm trying to get through, so I'm going to start with those because I have a lot. So let's just jump on into the spooky stories. So the first one, I'm not going to say names or anything. They said, I was maybe 15 or 16 in 2010. I woke up to the strangest feeling of discomfort and anxiety, like I was in a crowded room with strangers. I rolled over to go back to sleep, but the feeling just got worse until it felt really threatening. I live in a battleground area, so spooky stories are especially common. I wasn't sure what it was, but there was something that wanted to hurt me. The room went abnormally black, and my ears rang so bad I got nauseous. I felt so sick I had to run to the toilet, but I also had the intense feeling that if I walked out of my room, I would be attacked. The urge to not hurl in my bed overpowered me, and I ran as fast as I could to the toilet, and I just felt even worse. I hugged the bowl for about 30 minutes before the bright bathroom felt safe. Eventually, I was exhausted and just bolted downstairs to lay on the couch, but I just sat there in fear. Soon after, there was a faint glow coming from the back door through a curtain, and I saw a woman's silhouette just kind of appear and then disappear. And in that moment, I felt so comfortable. I finally passed out. When my mom woke me up, she asked me why I was on the couch, and I told her, and she said she also had a dream that her dad, who was not a great guy, was hurting her, but my grandmother, who had passed away a decade before, carried her away. Super strange series of coincidences. Number 2. I lived in a downtown home near a 400-year-old cemetery in around 2018. Weird stuff would happen. Motion lights would go on all the time, doors would shutter, and stuff would end up in places that it shouldn't be all the time. There was a bright energy to the place. It felt like a child's smile, and rarely we would hear a giggle at night. Strange of all is we would find pennies in places they have no reason to be. They'd be on shelves, in cabinets, in the shower, and always, and I mean always, standing on their edge. My ex and I thought we were pranking each other, and we never said anything until I was out of town and he found 3 of them on a shelf he had just cleaned. Number 3. I did tarot readings with my quarantine friends, 2020, and it was too accurate. She had mentioned spooky situations in her house, but I never felt them. Her reading said she would receive a great boon, but also lost something important to her. Within the next 2 weeks, she was offered a promotion, and later that day, her father-in-law passed away suddenly. Mine said I would survive a true tragedy, but would fall out of love. That weekend, I had a terrible series of surgeries after my appendix ruptured and went septic for 3 weeks. My now ex was so beside himself that he made the recovery all about him and how inconvenient it was to care for me, and he mentioned the lack of intimacy several times before he cheated on me. I'm sorry, that's terrible. Number 4. With the same friend a few months later, we did a Ouija board in her house. She wanted to know what inhabited her house, and she had saved it recently and it didn't fix anything. The Ouija board said JJ for one name, who we were talking to, and bad. We asked some questions, and eventually the clues led me to open an old crawl space and found some old sheets of child's toys and a small box with the name Jackson written on it in crayon. We went back to the board to learn about bad, but just kept getting please as a response. We asked if JJ was okay, but it stopped completely. We asked if JJ was still here. With our hands perfectly still, the board itself moved under our hands very quickly to no and goodbye. We both essentially peed our pants and never even thought about doing any paranormal stuff again. She mentioned a bit ago that all activity had stopped, but she still feels an ominous feeling in her basement. Number 5. This one technically predates all of these. I've had so many small paranormal encounters, and I blame my sleep paralysis demon. He's a creepy figure with a deer skull for a head and a large black hooded cloak, a twisted branch in one skeletal and a lantern in the other. From his back and behind his antlers is a huge halo of dead twigs, kind of like you would see in a portrait of Jesus, kind of like a halo. In my dreams, he catches on fire and chases me, and I've had this dream regularly for almost 20 years. Crazy part is, I worked in an animal hospital and I worked with therapy animals, and we had one client who was a little girl between 5 and 6 who was mostly nonverbal, and she liked me a lot. We bonded over the years, and she never said more to me than hi or bye and laughed. And on the last day before she moved, she drew me a stick figure with a scribble for a head and said, "Tell Stickman to go away." I think about that little girl all the time. And yes, these are all true to my best of my knowledge and memory. I love the spooky stories you read because they make me feel like I probably don't have a bag of nuts for brains. Laugh out loud. And I said, oh my god, these are all so creepy. That sounds like a Wendigo that he keeps seeing as his sleep paralysis demon. And he said it's kind of similar, yeah. And then I asked him if he had any more stories, and he said, I was driving from Las Vegas, Nevada, super early in the morning, around 3 a.m., and I came to a single intersection 100 miles or more from anything. I distinctly remember my GPS telling me to take a left, and soon after I heard shouting. I turned down my music and I saw a young woman in dirty jeans and a flannel waving me down from the side of the road. Typically, I wouldn't stop because I've heard of these scams, but the land was so flat, so I figured nothing could be hiding. I pulled over and she said she needed to get a ride back to Vegas. I asked how she got in the middle of nowhere, but she said her boyfriend was driving her and he started getting really violent and mean, so she threw herself out of a moving vehicle. We drove for a bit, and eventually she started hyperventilating and panicking and pointed ahead of her. I saw an oncoming truck and the headlights were coming towards us in my lane. I went to the other lane, but so did he. He came up so fast that right as I thought we were going to crash, I woke up, still parked at the stop sign with the GPS saying, turn left. And only a minute had passed. And I said, oh my god, that's insane. And they said, most definitely just a dream, but it was so real. But I called my friend I was going to meet to help keep me awake, and I mentioned it, and he said, oh yeah, those empty roads are full of ghosts. And that didn't help at all. So thank you so much for allowing me to read your stories. Your stories are really good and really creepy. And I'm sorry that you've been dealing with a sleep paralysis demon your whole life, because that's really fucking creepy. And like, you've been seeing this thing for like 20 years. That's fucking terrifying. And it's like catches on fire, then chases you. No thanks, I don't like that. That's fucking terrifying. Oh my god. Okay, not sure if you're still doing this, but like many other stories I've come across on your channel, I'll start this by saying, in new, and have absolutely fallen in love with your storytelling. I have a few, but here's my best. Several years ago, maybe a year or so after I finished high school, I was with a group of friends. I'll change everyone's names, including my own, for privacy. Anyway, this group of friends and I were quite bored on a summer night in a small town. So naturally, we broke out a Ouija board. So I'm sensing a theme for this video. It's a lot of Ouija boards, apparently. Like most places, we had our local ghost stories. You know, tales told to kids to keep them out of the woods. Well, we took our $12.99 glow-in-the-dark Ouija board to one of our town's most infamous spaces at midnight. So me, P, along with friends M, R, J, C, J, and R, all went to our local junior high school courtyard, where legend has it you'll hear a baby cry at midnight, to play the Ouija. We started by asking all the usual questions, and wouldn't you know, not a damn thing happened. So, defeated and still bored, we trudged back to R's place. She lived really close. Her mom was really chill. Looking back on it, probably a little too chill, and told us we should have lit candles, sat in a circle, you know, really do the damn thing. So, being incredibly stupid and immature, we did it again. But this time, it was different. We asked all the usual, is someone there? And we got a yes. Do you want to harm us? No. Em started acting strange. She was breathing kind of heavy, tearing up. No one else really noticed, but I did. I wish I had said something. R asked, do you want to tell us something? And it says yes. What? J and C had noticed by now that M was visibly and audibly upset. We met eyes, not wanting to break the link we had created. Without words, we agreed to let it ride. What? J asked the Ouija board again, more forcefully this time, as she was becoming scared and impatient. It spelled out hurt. That's when M let go. She began rocking back and forth, crying and sweating profusely. R started to go to her, but along with the others, I screamed for him to stop. Don't break the link. Our eyes were now brimmed with tears. Asked, you want to hurt one of us? It said no. So someone will know we'll get hurt? Yes. Okay, we all sat back. M, still noticeably hyperventilating, while R, face was still plastered with worry. C gave me the she's totally being dramatic look, and honestly I agreed. I wanted to get this moving along already. So I said, fine, who is going to get hurt? J. And circle J, rinse and repeat. We briefly discussed it as a group. None of us knew someone whose name began with J besides the people we were with. Me again, so someone with a J is going to get hurt? Yes. How? A wreck. M had visible tears rolling down her cheeks. I was beginning to get annoyed. Is anyone else going to be hurt? Yes. Well, who? I demanded, impatiently. It spelled out Brian. At this point, it was like 2 a.m. We were all irritated and bored and just blew out the candles and quit playing. We never said goodbye to the board. I was actually spending the night with R that night, and once everyone had left, we had settled into bed and it was around 3 a.m. Just as I closed my pretty little eyes, my mom called me. My cousin Jay was in a really bad motorcycle wreck. He wasn't dead, but he was hurt really bad and in a coma. But here's what really fucked me up. He and his wife had just had their son a couple weeks before, and they named him Brian. I know it sounds absolutely bonkers, but it's been almost 20 years, and my cousin Jay, who's alive, when he came out of his coma, he was different. Sometimes I still catch him looking at me, but I won't recognize his eyes. If I'm ever alone in a room with him, I'm just overwhelmed with this lightheaded feeling. I don't know, man. Sorry for any typos, I'm on a mobile phone, and it made me send multiple messages because my story was too long. Sorry about that. Your story wasn't too long. I love it when you guys send me longer stories. It makes these videos longer, and it makes it easier than having to like try to find more stories to read to you guys. So thank you so much for allowing me to read your story and sending that to me. That is really, really scary, and it's been 20 years, and I'm glad that Jay was okay, and I'm assuming their son was okay. I'm hoping. I don't mess with Ouija boards because Ouija boards are terrifying, and I don't think the other side is something to mess with. So that's why I would never play with them. But thank you so much for sending me your story, and I loved your names. I only read them out as like letters, but she changed all of the names in her story to like the cast of Friends, and I thought that was kind of funny. So the next one that I want to read is another one from my DMs, and it's an update from a story that I read. So I read her stories in a video from October. So she has an update, and she said, okay, something happened today that was genuinely scary. Please keep in mind, yesterday, my sister heard me call my dog into my room when I wasn't home, and my brother heard noises earlier today. My brother had left, and I had been gone for a couple of minutes, and I was on my computer taking screenshots from my thumbnail for my Sims channel. Out of nowhere, I heard a distant whistling as if someone was doing it outside. It started to get louder and louder. I generally thought someone was in my house, so I ran into my bathroom and grabbed onto my scissors, and trust me, my heart sank. I messaged everyone asking if they were home, and they did not answer. So I started panicking. After messaging my brother and begging him to come home, I messaged my dad. Someone is in the house. I'm dead ass. And I forgot to mention, right after I shut the bathroom door, there was so much ruckus happening in my house. My dad called me as I was on the bathroom shaking. He stays on the phone with me until he got home. He checked everywhere, and no one was in the house. I walk into the living room as he walks through the front door, and nothing was misplaced. I assume this is paranormal, but hey, I don't know. Heard something paranormal and they freaked out and ran to their bathroom, and I probably would do the exact same thing because that's fucking terrifying. I hate that. But thank you so much for sharing your story. I hope you don't have any more updates like that because that's fucking terrifying. I'm also always scared that that's going to be like an actual person and not even just being something paranormal. I think having an intruder in my house would be just as scary. That's fucking terrifying. I hate that. I have a couple of stories since that kind of stuff has been following me ever since I was born. And sorry in advance, but these are pretty long. Stuff like doors opening and closing when there was no draft or wind, lights flickering when there was no electrical issue, and the feeling of not being alone when I know I should be are things that happen on a daily basis for me. Even as I'm typing this, I have gotten used to it by now, honestly, and I can immediately feel if there is a presence around when I enter a room. But I have some experiences that stand out to me as particularly odd. First one occurred when I was only 1 year old. Now, I of course don't remember this, but my mom told me about it many times. A couple of months after I turned 1, my maternal grandmother sadly passed away, and my mom had to travel to her hometown to her funeral. While she was away, I developed a high fever and I wouldn't stop crying. My dad and my sister tried taking me to the doctor, but they couldn't figure out the source of my fever and why I was crying nonstop. It got so bad that my mom had to cut her trip short and come home and see what was wrong with me. After she came home, she couldn't figure it out either. And not knowing what else to do, my mom sat with me on the bed and just prayed that someone would give her the answers to what was bothering me. As she was sitting there and looking at me, she saw me glance at the door that started to slowly open on its own. She followed my eyes that were clearly looking at something that was moving across the room towards the bed. My mom couldn't see anything. Then she smelled my late grandmother's perfume and heard a faint whisper that told her my ear was hurting me. My mom then pressed on my right ear and I burst into tears. She took me to the doctor with the information, and when they checked, I had an ear infection. My mom and I think this was my grandmother's last goodbye and a reminder that she was always looking out for us. Second story. I would like to share something that happened more recently. 2 months ago, and whereas the last story was wholesome and sweet, this one is the complete opposite. In June of last year, I met my current boyfriend, and usually I don't mention to people my paranormal experiences because I think that they're going to think I'm a weirdo or something. Only my closest friends know about it because, well, they've seen it for themselves. But anyway, one time when we were just starting to get to know each other, my boyfriend and I were talking and the topic of the paranormal came up. I was so shocked to find out he had experiences of his own, and he believed me when I told him about mine. He can also feel presences if they are around him, just like me. This will come into play later. In my town, there's a big open area that used to be a resort with 5 abandoned hotels all lined up on the beach. The resort has been abandoned because of a war that happened 30 years ago, and everything there is now in ruins and overgrown with wild bushes. A lot of lives were lost when these hotels were bombarded at the war. Now, 30 years later, the old resort has become a hangout spot for younger people. It's isolated, not a lot of people go there, and there's absolutely no lighting whatsoever. So when it's dark, it's super dark. To get to these hotels, there are 3 paths you can take, and all 3 of them go through a dark forest that looks straight out of a horror film. So one night, me and my boyfriend went for a walk and decided to go to the resort. It was a full moon, and we thought it wouldn't be that scary because of the light of the moon was emitting. We started walking along one of the paths, and as soon as we stepped on it, it felt like there was hundreds of presences all around us, staring at us. But for whatever reason, I thought I was just paranoid, and we kept walking. But the feeling just got worse and worse. I felt like they were all around me, left, right, even up in the trees. I felt an increasing pressure, and I heard footsteps all around us. My heartbeat was getting faster, and it was getting hard for me to breathe. I felt myself going faster and faster until my boyfriend grabbed my hand, stopped me, and hugged me tightly and said, "I feel them too, they can't hurt us." At this point, I knew I wasn't being paranoid and imagining it, but now I felt stronger, so me and my boyfriend kept walking, and once we got to the beach, we couldn't feel them anymore. A few weeks later, I found out that that specific path we went on that night was used in the early 2000s for cult seances where they tried to make contact with the victims from the war. And some people say they accidentally invited some things that they weren't supposed to. My boyfriend and I still go to that abandoned resort, and we have noticed the paranormal activity seems to spike when there is a full moon, and I have been researching that a lot lately. So thank you so much for allowing me to read your story. That is really freaking creepy, and I don't know what I would do if I felt like a bunch of presences around me and your boyfriend could feel them and you could feel them. And I don't know, did anything else happen during that time that you guys spent at that abandoned hotel area? That's just where you ended the story. So I'm curious if anything else happened on your guys' way home or if that's just the end of the spookiness. But thank you so much for allowing me to read your story. That is really cool that you and your boyfriend both feel presences, but that is very, very creepy. My camera is about to die though, and I just had a battery mishap with this camera. I tried to put in my replacement battery, and apparently that battery has swollen up and it got stuck in my camera, and that was a very, very scary 10 minutes of my life trying to get that battery out. So this is where I'm going to end the video because my camera is now dying. So thank you so much for everybody that sent me in your stories. If you guys have any stories that you want to send me, any spooky stories, scary stories, or just creepy stories in general that you want me to read on the channel, please feel free to DM me on Instagram or send me an email. If you guys have left me a story in a comment, please feel free to take that story and send me a DM instead, because I can't really find comments on YouTube when I'm reading stories. It's too hard to have them all scattered all over like that. I have them all in one place if you guys send me them or DMs or emails, so it makes it a lot easier for me to read stories. So if you have any stories that you guys have sent me over comments on YouTube, please feel free to message me them and I will get to them as soon as possible. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you guys did enjoy this video, please make sure to give it a big thumbs up. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below for more content like this. If you guys made it to the end of the video, please leave me your favorite space emoji just so that I know that you guys watched the whole video, and I will be sure to reply or heart everybody that leaves me a comment. It helps me boost my video in the algorithm so that I can get a wider audience and get more friends joining our little family here on YouTube. But thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys at the next one. Bye!